Hello. So today we're going to go through a very quick, simple tip that's going to help you push your illustrations and just improve your poses. And it's super simple, and it's something I go through in every course that I do. But it's such a useful thing, and it makes such a difference, and it's such an easy thing to do. So I'm just going to show you. So I'll do a few examples, but we'll start off with this one. So this is a typical runway pose. I know you guys like drawing it. All the tip is basically exaggeration. So if we were to draw a pose like this is now, it would look something like this. It's kind of, it's all right. It does the job. You know, as a photo, it works really well. As a drawing, it does the job, like I said. So it'd be something a bit like this, which is it's a pretty enough illustration. Like there's nothing wrong with it. However, the simple way to improve your work is to exaggerate everything. And what I mean by exaggeration is at the moment, the legs are in this position. They're like that. Whereas if we angle them further, so the angle is more, I can't think of the word, bit more sharper. And then this is a little bit more like that. That is exaggerating it, and it just makes for a much more dynamic illustration. And so the same with the arms. At the moment, they're both there like that. You know, what happens if we put one in front and then one behind, one a bit longer, one a bit shorter. So if we draw that in real life, so we've got that, we've got this one here, we've got this one slightly behind. And we've got this angle being here, this here. So it's just exaggerating it. So instead of it being, I mean, I'm no mathematician. I don't know what it is. Like at the moment, that leg's probably at like, it's just about straight. So it's just about 170 degrees or something. We're wanting to, you know, turn that thing back, turn the dial back and make it a more cutting angle basically. You know, so here there's three things. So we've done a slanted shoulder instead of straight. We've got one arm in front, one arm behind, and then the angle of the legs is at a more dynamic, sharper angle. And something as super simple as that can really make for a more dramatic illustration, and it just makes for a just more interesting illustration really. And the reason is because when you're drawing something, you need to push it further than what the photo is, because if you're using a photo reference, a lot of the time what works in a photo doesn't necessarily work or translate as well into a drawing. And when I talk about this, I always use the example of animation, because animation, there's a lot, it happened a lot in, I think this, when it first started, like when Disney first started, they used to do a term called rotoscoping, which is you would film the real life actors acting out the scene, and then you would basically get that footage and then draw on top of it. And that would be, you know, how you animate it, because it's a lot easier and it's a lot quicker to do it that way. However, that's why some of those older films can look a little bit uncanny valley, because the animation and the way that people move is so lifelike that it can just look a little bit slightly off to us, or even perhaps a little bit stiff. So if you get an animator to draw something without rotoscoping, what you tend to see is that they exaggerate things a lot. So if someone's walking, you know, in real life, we just plod along, you know, we're kind of just walking at a steady thing. Whereas in animation, if someone were to draw someone walking, they would make them shorter when taking a stride, and then taller when making it they're taking a step or something like that. And it's kind of articulating the feeling of walking, and exaggerating that more so than actually it being very true to life. So this one's a very quick example, but we've got the true to life one here, which is, it's like she's kind of plodding along, whereas this one has a bit more attitude there because we've got these sharper angles. And it works with any pose. So if we were to draw this one as it is, as we see it, you know, the silhouette would be something like that, which is nice enough. It's a good pose. There's some angles in there. So it looks something like this. It's like I said, it works. It's not a bad thing. It's a decent pose. However, we can push it further. So obviously we're not going to make his legs like in a walking pose and stuff like that. But what you can do is, at the moment, his waist and his torso is at that angle. So what we can do is exaggerate it. So instead of being like this, we're going like this. And then another thing we can do, at the moment, these legs are going this direction, which I think is about 200 degrees or something. If you think a circle like this, and then, you know, the degrees here, it's about 200 degrees. I don't know if that's how maths works, but whatever. So what we can do is then push these legs so they're at a more dynamic angle, so they're at a sharper angle. So when we put all that together, that's how the pose changes. And then if we were to draw it, that's how it can look. So we've gone from a more standing pose to now there's a little bit more angles and it's a bit more dynamic. And this kind of technique, it just works with any pose. So same, we've got this guy standing there, it's a good pose, like I said, but what you can do is you can Again, make the angles a bit sharper, make this leg at more of a harsh angle, put that there. So when you colour that in, it's very subtle changes, but we're just shifting the hips, shifting the shoulders, and putting more angles into the legs, and then that ends up looking like that. So it's just a bit more dynamic, and it's pushing the pose a little bit more without completely changing it. So we've got side by side, you know, this is just a bit more dynamic, there's some more sharper angles, and it's just a bit more interesting. So that's a technique. It's very simple. You're just pushing the poses. So I think of it as if I was liquefying them. So you got the figure here. If you kind of push this over here, push this over here, you know, you're just morphing that body to kind of be a little bit more dynamic. So that's the trick. It's very simple. I teach it to anyone that will listen. But it can just make such a big difference. And there's loads of other things that you can do to make posing more dynamic. But this is just kind of one of those ones that is simplest to implement because it doesn't take finding other references and stuff like that. It's just a case of working and exaggerating with what you've already got. So like I said, there's loads of things that you can do to exaggerate and you know, improve your posing and things like that. And I'm going to be going through them all in the new course that I'm doing, which is all about posing. So pre-sale ends today. So if you want to grab a pre-sale space, which they come with a free module. It's a 2-hour module about how to draw from imagination. So it's kind of trying to debunk the myth, you know, and kind of make drawing from imagination a little bit more understandable. And because it's something that a lot of people are kind of a little bit scared by or kind of overwhelmed by. So I'm trying to sort of debunk the myth behind it a little bit. The course starts on Monday, so you can get a space up until Sunday evening, so there's no rush unless it's just if you want to get the pre-sale space and get that free module. And we'll just be going over, it's a 4-week course, we'll be going over everything in detail about posing. You know, we'll start with how to break away from the traditional runway pose, and then we'll go into how to pose for different garments, you know, how a pose can improve how a garment looks, how to draw what you can't see, how to utilize photos to create something unique, you know, fail-safe methods and how to make a more interesting illustration, do's and don'ts for anatomy when posing, because I notice a lot of people focus a lot on the posing and forget about the structure, and like your legs can't bend certain ways and your arms can't go certain ways, and that kind of, a lot of people seem to forget that when they're so fixated on having to change the pose. But there's a lot to go through, and it should be a really good course because it's going to be very thorough and very honed in. Because like I said in last week's video, like posing is probably the #1 most important thing about a fashion illustration. So grab a space there. There's payment plans available as well. There's about half the spaces have already gone, so there's I think about 7 or 8 spaces left. So if you want to improve your posing, then come join. So there's another one of these videos out later in the week, which I'm just going to go through a few more posing things. And then, yeah, the course begins on Monday. So I'll see you then. Thanks for watching. Ta-ra.